to another video presented by Raven Expeditions. Please subscribe to my channel and share this video to support my work. Over 500 kilometers south of Cairo and about 170 kilometers north of Luxor is the city of Abydos that was sacred in antiquity. It is the site of many ancient temples and the necropolis of the first kings of a united Egypt, later becoming a pilgrimage site for the worship of God Osiris, who was believed to have been buried here. Abydos is now one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt. The Temple of Seti I at Abydos, also known as the Great Temple of Abydos, is perhaps the most famous and significant temple in the city. Since Abydos is not as easily reached as many other sites, it is not crowded with tourists. So during my visit, there were only a handful of other visitors, and I had the place almost all to myself. Upon entering the temple, I found myself in the huge hypostyle hall. I was awestruck by its immense size. The first features which I focused on once I regained my senses from the initial amazement were the images of the flying objects that have given rise to much controversy in recent years. In fact, those who support the theory that aliens had a hand in building the colossal ancient Egyptian sites look to these for proof. However, there's a far easier explanation here. This is what we call a palimpsest, that is, a more recent carving covering an earlier one, where the earlier carving has not been completely erased, thus creating bizarre shapes which look highly anachronistic. Indeed, following the death of Seti I, his successor Ramses II filled this area with plaster and carved different hieroglyphs. Over time, the plaster cracked and flaked, leaving both carvings partially visible, creating this palimpsest with the two overlapping inscriptions. Seti I was the second pharaoh of the 19th dynasty during the New Kingdom in Egypt. He was the father and immediate predecessor of Ramses the Great. In fact, this temple was begun by Seti I and completed by his son Ramses II following the death of his father. Ramses II ensured to leave his mark in this temple, since his cartouches are found in certain parts of the temple with his characteristic sunken reliefs as opposed to the raised reliefs of his father. While going around the temple, I could not help but feel that this is far older than what we're told. It feels really ancient. There's something about it that makes it look very, very old. The huge flagstones, the enormous columns, the dark atmosphere. Besides, I was overcome by a stillness like no other. Peace and tranquility permeated the entire temple from the instant I set foot inside. It was such a beautiful feeling. It's possible that all this combined has left this impression. Like the temples of his predecessors, Seti I dedicated this temple to God Osiris. However, it has an unusual L-shaped ground plan and does not follow the typical plan of other temples in Egypt. It has several chambers and courts and contains 7 chapels dedicated to the major gods of Egypt, including Ptah, Re-Horakhti, Amun-Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and one dedicated to Seti I himself as a deified being. These chapels are decorated with scenes of the pharaoh making offerings to the gods and in return receiving the symbols of life and power from them. Many of the wall reliefs are impressively well preserved. Building this temple was one of Seti I's ways of legitimizing his reign, since his father, Ramses I, had been a warrior and eventually vizier during the reign of Horemheb, the last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Therefore, since Seti I was not of royal descent, he had to consolidate his reign as pharaoh. Constructing monuments and temples was one way of doing so. An area in this temple that further legitimized his claim to the throne is the Gallery of the Ancestors that features what has become known as the Abydos Kings List. Here he is depicted presenting his son and successor Ramses II, still a child with the side look of youth. The list contains the names of 76 kings of ancient Egypt, predecessors of Seti I, whom he recognized and acknowledged as legitimate pharaohs. It begins with the first king Menes or Narmer, the founder of the first dynasty, and ends with Seti I himself, thus recording almost 2,000 years of Egyptian history, despite with some omissions. In fact, the list deliberately omits several earlier pharaohs who were considered illegitimate by Seti himself, including Hatshepsut, Akhenaten, Smenkhare, Tutankhamun, and I. So despite being an important source to historians about ancient Egyptian pharaohs, the list is not complete and should be seen in conjunction with the other kings' lists found in Egypt. At the back of the Temple of Seti I is the Osirion, an enigmatic underground structure with huge blocks of stone, giving rise to several theories about its age and purpose in antiquity. This will be the topic of a future video. For now, I hope you've enjoyed the tour of this beautiful temple.